Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Beyond World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today from West Asia, senior Hamas officials said that the group has accepted a request from mediators to discuss new proposals for a ceasefire and the release of hostages and Palestinian prisoners. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, on the other hand, has sent a letter to Israeli Prime Minister protesting the new law that could effectively cripple the UN agency responsible for aiding Palestinian refugees. We'll get you all the latest on that.
This and a lot more right here on World DNA. Also, we bring you updates from the US Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris warned against Donald Trump's bid to seize unchecked power in a fiery speech on Tuesday at a spot where her rival riled up a mob before the deadly January 6, 2021 assault on the US Capitol. Now, the choice of the ellipse, a park linking the White House to the vast National Mall, seems like a direct attempt by her campaign to remind voters of the chaos caused by Trump's attempt to overturn his 2020 election loss to Joe Biden. This and a lot more right here on World DNA for you. Let's get started with the headlines.
Senior Hamas official says it was studying new proposals from mediators to end the war, but reiterates demand for complete Israeli military withdrawal from Gaza.
United States voices concern over recent Israeli strike in Gaza that killed nearly 100 people, including children. Says it was asking its ally for answers over the horrifying raid.
Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris warns that Donald Trump will seek unchecked power in election speech at the site where her rival addressed crowds before the 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol.
China's Shenzhou 19 mission takes off. 3 astronauts, including country's only woman spaceflight, head to the Tiangong space station.
Several bodies recovered by emergency service workers in flood-hit parts of Spain's Valencia, says the head of the regional government.
Ruben Amorim is set to be confirmed as Manchester United manager after Sporting said the Red Devils were ready to play his release clause of $10 million. The Portuguese still remains tight-lipped.
All right, our top story on World DNA today. Palestinian militant group Hamas has said that it is ready to discuss new proposals for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostage and Palestinian prisoners.
Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuri said the group has accepted a request from mediators to explore new proposals and is open to discuss any deal or any kind of ideas that could lead to a permanent ceasefire, as well as the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from the entire territory and lift the blockade.
The movement's delegation confirmed that the movement is open to any agreement or ideas that end the suffering of our people in Gaza and stop the ceasefire once and for all, and lead to the occupation's withdrawal from the entire Gaza Strip, lifting the siege, providing relief and shelter support to our people, rebuilding and reaching a serious deal for the prisoners.
The decision comes after Gaza's Civil Defense Agency said an Israeli airstrike on a residential block in northern Gaza, Beit Laia, killed nearly 100 people on Tuesday. At least 20 children were among the dead. Video footage showed several bodies wrapped in blankets on the ground outside a bombed 4-story building. Now, more bodies and survivors were being retrieved from under the wreckage. The United States called the Israeli strikes horrifying. Washington has asked Israel for answers, expressing deep concerns by the loss of civilian life in this incident.
This was a horrifying incident with a horrifying result. I can't speak to the total death toll, but there are reports of 24 children killed in this incident. No doubt a number of them are children who have been fleeing the effects of this war for more than a year now. We have reached out to the government of Israel to ask what happened here. We don't yet know the underlying circumstances. We have not gotten a full explanation from them about what happened. But you step back and look at where we are in this campaign.
The State Department also said it is deeply troubled after Israel's parliament passed 2 laws to prevent the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, from being able to continue its work in United Nations. The United States slammed Israel for not doing enough to help Palestinians in Gaza. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said Israel's words must match their actions on the ground.
At the same time, the United States has made clear to Prime Minister Netanyahu that 1 year into this conflict, Israel must address the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That the United States rejects any Israeli efforts to starve Palestinians in Jabalia or anywhere else. And that Israel's words must be matched by action on the ground.
The envoy also reiterated that the U.S. threats to withhold arms from Israel and warned Israeli PM that there is no alternative to a UN aid agency in Gaza. She said Netanyahu must address the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Meanwhile, the IDF announced that 4 Israeli soldiers were killed and an officer was seriously injured during fighting in the northern Gaza Strip on Tuesday. The Israeli Defense Forces said they all served with the elite multi-domain unit, also called Coast Unit. They were killed in fighting in the Jabalia area, which has been the focus of the recent IDF offensive in northern Gaza.
All right, to understand this more, we're being joined by Adrian Kellerman, live from New York. He's a fellow at Arabian Peninsula Institute, terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar, and he's also the author of forthcoming book on Hezbollah. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Joseph.
Right. Now, let me begin by asking you, the demand from Hamas has always been rejected by Israel. But for now that Hamas has agreed for negotiations, what could these negotiations entail for the ceasefire to come in place?
Well, there's going to be parts that Hamas is going to be pushing for to make sure that there's still a viable fighting force and a ruling force within Gaza. And there's going to, and from the Israeli side, and the Israeli perspective, this one cannot happen inside Gaza again. Hamas cannot be a political force in Gaza. It cannot be a military force in Gaza. And most of all, there needs to be a release of the hostages. This has been this has been top of the discussions from day one. You release the hostages, this takes a whole new perspective. But the hostages are leverage for Hamas, which has a very weak hand and has been decimated and annihilated. This is a Hail Mary.
Mr. Kellerman, do you feel a leaderless Hamas is closer to being pushed into a ceasefire deal as compared to earlier? Is there any prospect of that happening, which is better now than it was earlier with Yahya Sinwar not in the picture?
That's a great question, Shivan. And I really think it comes back to yes, there is multiple people that seem to be running Hamas. There seems to be some conflict within Hamas, within the leadership. Mm-hmm. But I think it all comes back to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Are they going to accept the deal? Are they going to allow Hamas to accept a deal?
Right. Now, let's also talk about the fact that Israel has banned UNRWA. Let's say if the ceasefire does come to be, will Israel consider lifting the ban? Because we know that after a ceasefire, we need aid in Gaza and in that kind of situation.
Israel will not lift that ban for the sole purpose and the reason that multiple UNRWA officials not only participated in the October 7th attacks, but have been discovered to be full-fledged members of Hamas. So Israel will not allow this to happen. Now, there's this narrative that there are no alternatives to get aid into Gaza, and this simply is not true. There are plenty of other organizations that have not been politicized, and really, UNRWA was hijacked by Hamas, and Israel cannot let UNRWA continue to do that. They control the not just the food shipments and those things, but going down to the very textbooks that children in Palestine, in Gaza, are learning about. It's to brew hatred and sheer anti-Semitism. So UNRWA is it's been delegitimized by this conflict. It really has.
Adrian, you'd mentioned about Iran, of course, earlier in our earlier exchange. Given the kind of attacks that Israel carried out on Iran, I wanted to just get your thoughts on this. Iran, of course, claims that it largely thwarted the Israeli attack. There are reports which suggest that Israel strategically took out several of its air defense systems, which were guarding a lot of their energy facilities. Was this attack by Israel a precursor for a future attack, leaving their strategic points guardless?
Shivan, that's the same question I've been asking myself, and I lean towards yes. That's a clear message to the Islamic Republic. The first time Israel struck back, it was just one strike after the large barrage, and they took out the same type of system that guarded a nuclear facility. This time they took out a number of S-300 Russian systems that protect the energy system. So the Islamic Republic knows that if you collapse their economy, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And the message is quite clear. You step over the line again, we're going to hit those.
Adrian Calmel, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you and having an exchange of questions, which you always answer.
Always a pleasure, Shivan. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we move on now. Staying in West Asia, Israel's military chief has vowed to hit Iran very hard if it retaliates against Israel for its attacks on Iranian targets over the weekend.
Well, this as Israel made its deepest incursion yet into Lebanon in a ground operation launched last month. Now, Lebanese state media has said Tuesday that Israeli tanks entered the outskirts of the village of Khiam. The official national news agency reported the entry of a large number of tanks into the eastern outskirts of Khiam, some 6 kilometers from the border with Israel. Hezbollah said it destroyed 2 tanks using guided missiles and targeted Israeli troops south and southwest of Khiam with rockets and artillery. Lebanon's national news agency said Israeli forces carried out a series of air attacks on Khiam later on Tuesday and launched a large-scale sweep using heavy and medium weaponry. Hezbollah claims that Israeli forces are yet to assert full control over any village in Lebanon weeks into the invasion, amid repeated operations to repel Israeli attempts at infiltration.
The town of Khiam holds a symbolic significance. It was home to a notorious prison run by the South Lebanon Army, an Israeli proxy militia during Israel's occupation of South Lebanon. Israeli troops withdrew from the region in the year 2000 after 22 years.
Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, has warned Hezbollah's new leader, Naim Qassem, that his appointment was not for long, quote unquote. Hezbollah had named Qassem as Hassan Nasrallah's successor, who was killed in Israeli airstrikes earlier. Now, Gallant also claimed that he estimated Hezbollah's rocket arsenal to have been mostly destroyed by Israeli attacks, saying that Hezbollah was left with only 20% capacity of its projectiles and rockets.
Now, in recent weeks, Hezbollah has fired between 180 and 200 rockets on some days, and that is according to figures provided by the Israeli military.
I estimate the residual capacity of Hezbollah's projectiles and rockets to be in the order of 20%, and it is no longer organized in a way that it can fire volleys or similar things.
Meanwhile, Israeli military chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi has said that if Iran launches another attack against Israel, then IDF will hit back with capabilities that it did not even use during the last attack on Iranian targets.
If Iran makes the mistake of launching another missile, we will once again know how to reach Iran with capabilities that we did not even use this time, and strike very hard both at their capabilities and locations that we have spared for now.
On Saturday, Israeli fighter jets carried out airstrikes against Iranian military targets and missile production facilities in retaliation for a major ballistic missile attack by Tehran earlier this month.
Now, amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Russia has conducted extensive nuclear drills, stimulating a massive response to potential enemy strikes.
And this comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin highlighted the importance of modern nuclear forces. Russia has claimed to have carried out nuclear drills, launching missiles from land, sea, and water. The exercises involve the country's full nuclear triad. Russia has signaled to the West that Moscow will respond if the United States and its allies allow Kiev to fire long-range missiles deep into Russia. Russian Defense Minister told Putin that the purpose of the drill was to practice delivering a counter-nuclear strike by strategic offensive forces in response to a possible strike by enemies.
The exercise included the launch of Yar's intercontinental ballistic missile from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, as well as submarine-launched Sineva and Bulava missiles. And this demonstrates Russia's capability to respond to a nuclear strike with significant force. Just last month, Russian President Vladimir Putin approved the changes to Russia's official nuclear doctrine, extending the scenarios under which Moscow could resort to nuclear means. Putin underscored that nuclear weapons would only be used as an extremely exceptional measure.
He also noted that Russia is developing new missile systems that could evade missile defense mechanisms, highlighting a strategic shift in their military doctrine. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden has expressed concerns over the development of North Korean troops in Russia. Biden suggested that Ukraine should respond forcefully if the North Korean troops cross into its territory.
The Pentagon has confirmed that some North Korean troops are in the Kursk region, a Russian border area with Ukraine.
As we highlighted earlier this week, we believe that the DPRK has sent approximately 10,000 soldiers in total to train in eastern Russia, and that these troops will probably augment Russian forces near Ukraine over the next several weeks. A portion of those soldiers have already moved closer to Ukraine towards Russia's Kursk Oblast near the border with Ukraine, approximately a couple thousand, with a smaller number already present in the Kursk region.
In the meantime, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met the Swedish and Norwegian prime ministers. Zelensky said a conference would begin in Canada on Wednesday on alleged abduction of thousands of children by Russia from Ukraine.
In the uncharted depths of the world's oceans, a high-stakes game of espionage is unfolding far from the public eye.
Well, this next story decodes how US, Russia and China, they're all scrambling to secure a foothold, each vying for dominance over this hidden strategic battleground. Take a look at this report.
The depths of the ocean, once considered a tranquil and mysterious realm, have emerged as a new battleground for nations vying global dominance. As tensions rise between major powers, the underwater domain has become a strategic focal point, with countries investing heavily in advanced technologies to secure their interests and monitor their friends and foes alike. China has made a stunning claim of recovering espionage devices from the ocean floor, highlighting the growing importance of seabed warfare. These devices, according to Beijing, include underwater lighthouses are designed to guide submarines. If true, The findings underscore the extent to which nations are exploiting the ocean's depths for intelligence gathering and military purposes. This battle over the ocean floor coincides with rising tensions in the South China Sea, where confrontations between China and the Philippines and its dangerous moves around Taiwan have grown increasingly frequent, with potential to draw in the US. Washington, recognizing the strategic importance of the ocean, is investing billions of dollars in its naval capabilities. The development of advanced submarines, equipped with sophisticated sensors and weapon systems in an effort to maintaining its dominance in the maritime domain. On the other hand, Russia continues to deploy its submarines around the world to keep an eye on its adversaries. The North Koreans too are rapidly developing and demonstrating technologies to harness the ocean depths. The stakes are high. Beneath these waters lie oil and gas pipelines, along with telecommunication cables that carry the world's internet traffic. These crucial arteries are exceptionally vulnerable to sabotage, raising fear of covert operations that could cripple global communications in an instant. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
With just days to go for the US presidential elections, Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris and Republican former President Donald Trump are locked in the closest and most volatile election of modern times.
So let's take at the top stories that are shaping this race. Vice President Kamala Harris held a rally at the spot where Trump had addressed a mob before the assault on the U.S. Capitol in 2021. The choice of the ellipse, a park linking the White House to the National Mall, was a direct attempt by her campaign to remind voters of the chaos caused by Trump's attempt to overturn his 2020 election loss to Joe Biden. Harris warned against Trump's bid to seize unchecked power and promised to be a president for all Americans. Unlike Trump, whom she accused of wanting to jail his enemies. Her campaign claimed 75,000 people that attended the rally, but the number could not be immediately verified.
Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump headed to Pennsylvania, where he took part in a roundtable discussion. The former president claimed that no president has done more for Puerto Rico than he has. His comment came days after a comedian's joke about Puerto Rico at a Trump rally sparked outrage. A Puerto Rican woman participating in a roundtable expressed her support for Trump, and Trump did not say anything about the comedian's remarks but bragged about his record with Puerto Rico.
Well, we love it. I know it very well, and we helped you through a lot of bad storms, I'll tell you. We had some really bad ones. You remember you were there when I brought the hospital ship against everyone's advice, and we got it in there and took care of a lot of people. But I think no president's done more for Puerto Rico than I have. So thank you. That's really nice of you to say. Appreciate it. Thank you, Matt.
President Joe Biden took a swipe at a comedian who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage at former President Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. After announcing a $3 billion investment to improve the country's port infrastructure, Biden said that the funding will also include Puerto Rico. Referring to comedian's comments, he went on to say that he would like to take that guy for a swim out there.
But today I'm proud to announce we're delivering $3 billion in funding from my Inflation Reduction Act to help clean up and modernize ports in 27 different states and territories. from Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and beyond, including, yes, Puerto Rico. I'd like to take that guy for a swim out there. Anyway.
All right, another global news. China has launched its Shenzhou 19 crewed spaceship, sending 3 astronauts, including the country's first female space engineer, to its orbiting space station for a 6-month mission.
Now, this marks the 33rd flight mission in China's manned space program and the 4th manned mission during the application and development stage of their National Space Station Tiangong. What makes this mission so remarkable is the upcoming space reunion, the 5th in-orbit crew handover on China's space station. In an orbital tradition, the Shenzhou 18 crew will welcome the new crew aboard, passing along responsibilities and the ever-important symbolic pattern of progress. The upcoming rendezvous reflects a relay race in space, a relentless push for one generation of astronauts to the next, now spanning 3 batches of astronauts.
The latest Shenzhou 19 mission will be led by Kai Shuzhe, a veteran of Shenzhou 14 mission. The other 2 crew members, Song Lingdong and Wang Haoze, will be conducting their first mission. Wang is currently China's only female spaceflight engineer and is 3rd female Chinese national to be sent to space. This long-term manned presence has solidified China's position in space, making them one of the few countries to maintain a continuous presence in orbit.
All right, viewers, let's quickly take a short break. Jyotsna and I will be back with you after the break. Lots more lined up for you on the other side. The United States has welcomed efforts by India and China to resolve border tensions as both countries almost complete disengagement along the LAC.
Well, as India celebrates Diwali this week, on the other side, we take a look at how the country is preparing for the Festival of Lights.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsa Kumar, and my colleague Shivan Chanana. Let's start with the headlines.
United States welcomes efforts by India and China to resolve border tensions. Both countries almost complete disengagement along the line of actual control. LAC.
China's Shenzhou 19 mission takes off. 3 astronauts, including country's only woman spaceflight engineer, head to the Tiangong space station.
Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris warns that Donald Trump will seek unchecked power in election speech at the site where her rival addressed crowds just before the 2021 attack on the US Capitol.
Senior Hamas official says it was studying new proposals from mediators to end the war, but reiterates demand for complete Israeli military withdrawal from Gaza.
United States voices concern over recent Israeli strike in Gaza that killed nearly 100 people, including children. Says it was asking its ally for answers over the horrifying raid.
Several bodies recovered by emergency service workers in flood-hit parts of Spain's Valencia, says the head of the regional government.
Ruben Amorim is set to be confirmed as Manchester United manager after Sporting said the Red Devils were ready to pay his release clause of $10 million. The Portuguese still remains tight-lipped.
The United States has welcomed efforts by India and China to resolve border tensions.
And this is, of course, after the two nations agreed on ways to step back from the deadly 2020 confrontation. Now, the State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said Washington is closely following the developments. He said that the United States has discussed the issue with India, but clarified that Washington was not involved in any negotiations.
According to reports, the disengagement of Indian and Chinese armies from Depsang and Demchok in eastern Ladakh is almost over, with both sides simultaneously carrying out joint verification of the troop and equipment withdrawal to a mutually agreed distance from the standoff sites. Last week, India and China worked out patrolling arrangements in the area to disengage their militaries with an eye to an eventual resolution. China and India have disputes over their 3,500-kilometer frontier, which came to a head in 2020 with a skirmish in the Himalayas that killed at least 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers.
The agreement came shortly before Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping met for the first time in 5 years on the sidelines of a BRICS summit in Russia. The United States has been building ties with India for more than 2 decades. Washington considers New Delhi as a natural partner due to shared concerns over the rise of China. And this year, the United States approved a $4 billion sale of state-of-the-art drones to India that could be used for surveillance in India's border areas. Well, it's Diwali week in India. Everyone's in festive mood and people around the country are busy in shopping, of course, and decorating their homes for the Festival of Lights.
In western Indian state of Maharashtra, Diwali comes just before the assembly elections. More about it in our next report. The Festival of Lights Diwali is here, and people have already started preparations in full swing in the western Indian state of Maharashtra. Markets are overflowing with vibrant decor, rangoli colors, and traditional lamps. India's financial capital city, Mumbai's markets continue to thrive with festive stalls, attracting people from all walks of life, united in their desire to honor tradition and celebrate joyfully. Dadar market remains the epicenter of cultural celebration, challenging both shoppers and vendors alike to navigate the chaos. Every year, Mumbai's Dadar market sees an influx of shoppers as crowds swell for last-minute festive purchases. Festive lighting products are in high demand as buyers seek to beautify their homes for Diwali. People carefully can be seen selecting traditional clay lamps which illuminate homes during the 5-day festival. Coincidentally, this year the festival comes just ahead of Maharashtra Assembly elections, which is scheduled on November 20th. So the atmosphere in the state is even more vibrant, with political parties campaigning on the roads and conducting rallies.
As the Diwali celebrations are very close to the elections that is going to be scheduled this year, many political parties are using this as an opportunity to connect with people. As per official record, hundreds of Diwali events like the cultural and the tradition events are planned throughout the state, especially in the metro cities, and many of the political parties are backing these events as well. They say this will be a good opportunity for them to connect with people, to know what is going on the ground level just before the assembly polls this year.
Keeping in mind the festival and elections later, the security has been increased significantly. Traffic police personnel can be seen managing the crowd on busy roads to ensure no untoward incident takes place, especially at markets and at the political campaign rallies. Throughout the state, the Election Commission of India has also appointed flying squads who are stopping and checking vehicles for cash-carrying violations. In fact, Maharashtra Chief Minister Eknath Shinde declared a Diwali bonus for Brihanu Mumbai Municipal Corporation workers. The bonus will also extend to ASHA workers and kindergarten teachers. This decision comes closely on the heels of another announcement from the Shinde government, which declared a complete toll waiver for light motor vehicles at 5 key toll booths in Mumbai. Bureau Report, WION World is One. Well, speaking of Diwali, the northern Indian city of Ayodhya is preparing for its first Diwali after consecration of Ram Temple.
Ayodhya, birthplace of Sri Ram, is set to glow with joy and is set to dazzle in divine lights as 3 days of festivities begin today. Now, the festivities will kick off with a world record attempt illuminating Ram Ki Pedi with 2.8 million. That's Ram Ki Pauri with 2.8 million earthen lamps on Diwali. Devotees across the country have been thronging the temple town to witness this unparalleled celebration. The Deepotsav will showcase a Shobha Yatra featuring 18 tableaus depicting 7 chapters of the Ramayana.
Now, accompanying this spectacular display will be a laser show, projection mapping a grand fireworks display, transforming the cityscape into a visual feast. Preparations of the grand event are in the final stages.
About 11,000 women adorned in yellow and red saris practiced for Saryo Aarti, while arrangements for eco-friendly fireworks underwent final inspections.
Nearly 100 artists synchronized their movements to perfection for centerpiece performance, and a fleet of drones stood prepared to create a magnificent spectacle.
Apple's iPhone exports from India hit $6 billion in the 6 months through September.
And this marks a 33% increase compared to the same period last year. This milestone aligns with Apple's ongoing strategy to shift manufacturing away from China.
Now, India is becoming a vital production hub for Apple, aided by local incentives and a skilled workforce. Apple's exports from India are on track to surpass $10 billion for the fiscal year, with iPhones leading the country's smartphone exports to the US.
Now, 3 suppliers, including Taiwan's Foxconn, Pegatron, and India's Tata Electronics, assemble Apple iPhones in India, with Foxconn accounting for half of these exports. Tata, having acquired Wistron's iPhone factory in Karnataka, has contributed approximately $1.7 billion in exports in just 6 months. India's efforts, bolstered by government subsidies, have enabled Apple to manufacture high-end models like the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max locally, meeting the rising demand for premium smartphones within India and overseas markets.
While iPhones account for nearly 7% of India's smartphone market, Apple sees significant potential, aiming to reach $33 billion in sales in India by 2030. In addition to increasing exports, Apple has expanded its retail presence with new stores and a strong online presence sales drive. This has boosted revenues to $8 billion in the past fiscal year. And this shift towards India comes as China's economic outlook faces uncertainties, and Apple's efforts to reduce reliance on its traditional production base are well underway. Sub-Saharan Africa is facing a tough economic year, while IMF projects growth at 3.6%. High debt, inflation and social unrest are putting pressure on recovery efforts.
Now, our next report delves into the economic pressures that is gripping African countries. Take a look.
Sub-Saharan Africa faces a challenging economic landscape in 2024. IMF forecasts regional growth at 3.6%, but pressures from debt and inflation remain high. In almost 1/4 of countries, interest payments now exceed 20% of revenue, making funds for essential development projects increasingly scarce. Although efforts to stabilize are underway, macroeconomic imbalances persist, with public debt averaging 58% of GDP and 1/3 of countries still facing double-digit inflation. Resource-intensive nations, particularly oil exporters, are also under strain, growing at half the pace of the rest of the region. The region's economic challenges are compounded by social and environmental pressures. Social unrest is escalating, driven by rising living costs, high unemployment, and concerns over governance. Meanwhile, climate-related disruptions are on the rise. This year alone, droughts, floods, and extreme weather events impacted key economies like Malawi, Zambia, and Madagascar, damaging agricultural output and worsening food insecurity. These pressures contribute to an environment of fragility, complicating efforts to implement necessary fiscal and monetary reforms. Financing remains a critical barrier to economic stability in sub-Saharan Africa. With domestic debt markets saturated and Eurobond yields as high as 10.7%, many nations face difficulty accessing affordable funding. Global uncertainties add further risk, with geopolitical conflicts and economic slowdowns in major economies like China and the United States impacting the region. This tight financial landscape forces policymakers into difficult decisions, balancing fiscal adjustments with social needs while navigating limited access to foreign reserves. For 1/3 of countries, it is below the critical 3-month import cover. As the IMF highlights, addressing these issues will require careful reform and enhanced resilience building strategies across the region. Business Bureau WION World is One.
All right, next up, we take a look at the developments coming in from the world of technology. China's Ministry of State Security has said that it has found hidden spying devices on the ocean surface and deep underwater. An official statement from the ministry said that some devices were planted on the ocean floor to transmit data, which had implications for battlefield strategy. China's national security forces claim to have seized a variety of special technical devices that are used for spying on marine information and data. The Chinese ministry has revealed that some of the devices found drift on waves, gathering data in Chinese waters, while others serve as navigational aids for foreign submarines. This comes amid heightened tensions in the South China Sea, where recent clashes between China and the Philippines over territorial claims risk drawing the U.S.'s attention due to its defense commitment to the Philippines.
Brazil's Collective Defense Institute, a consumer rights group, has filed 2 lawsuits against the Brazilian units of TikTok, Quai and Meta platforms. The institute has demanded around $525 million from these companies. TikTok, Quai and Meta platforms have been accused of allegedly failing to create mechanisms to prevent indiscriminate use of these social media platforms by minors. Moreover, the lawsuits demand the companies create a clear data protection mechanism and issue warnings about the risks to children and teenagers, their mental health due to platform addiction. The lawsuits are based on a series of studies on the possible damage caused by the unsupervised use of social media, especially by children and teenagers.
NVIDIA-backed biotech firm IMBIC Therapeutics has revealed a new AI model which it claims could drastically reduce the time and money needed to develop new drugs. Named Enchant, the AI model is trained on preclinical laboratory data from drugs before human trials. Now, the model is capable of predicting how a specific drug will perform in the initial development stage itself. Now, during testing, the AI model showed a high degree of accuracy when predicting how well the human body would absorb certain drugs. The results were then cross-referenced to real-world outcomes. Iambic Therapeutics' new AI model could potentially revolutionize the use of AI for drug recovery.